Now that we've fixed all the mistakes in our data table, we need to make sure that our data tables are clear and easy to read. So I'm going to show you quick and fast ways to make sure that your data table is clear and easy to read, and I'm going to show you ways to avoid the most common mistakes that students make. The very first mistake that students often make is that when they finish their data table, they print right away. That's a problem. Let me show you why. I'm going to go to File, I'm going to click on Print, and I'm just doing this so that I'll think about the edges of the page, and I'm going to go back to Home. And now that I've did that, it just automatically shows these dotted lines, which is the edges of your page. And you can see that the edge of your page is right here and here, which means your two data tables, both your raw and your processed data tables, fit on 1, 2, 3 different pages. That's a problem. If you give me a data table like that on 3 different pages, I'm going to seriously mark down your lab for not being clear and easy to read. It is very frustrating to anybody who has to read a table that goes on multiple pages. So we need to fix this so it fits on 1 page. That's the biggest, most important thing you do, if nothing else. So one of the ways we can do that is we can go to Page Layout, and we can turn the orientation of the page to landscape, that's sideways. I'm much more willing to just turn a page sideways to read a lab than I am to flip back and forth through different pages. So please turn it landscape. That's fine. I have no problems rotating a page. That's fine and easy to do. Now there's landscape, you can see at least it fits now on 2 pages, and each page can hold more. But it's still not good enough. I want it on 1 page. So how can we do that? Well, we've got to shrink these cells. Some of these columns are just really wide. Like this column doesn't need to be that wide except for the title. Same with this one. So let's pick a column. You click on the actual column name, so C, and it highlights the whole column. And if you move your mouse over until it shows this double arrow, one pointing one way, one pointing the other, you can actually change the width of the column. I'm going to change the width of the column to about this big, which should be fine. But you'll notice the rest of the actual title, which should say plus or minus uncertainty in the books plus or minus uncertainty, height, that's supposed to say of books in centimeters, right? It's all cut off except for the plus or minus uncertainty. So how do I get it to actually display the whole title? The problem is that Excel automatically defaults to having 1 line of text per cell. So when it comes to the edge of the cell, it just ends. Where in something like Microsoft Word, when it comes to the edge of the page, right, it wraps around and begins the next line. So we want it to do that within the cell itself. So we're going to get it to do it not only in this one, but all these cells, because it would be useful for all of them. So I highlight the whole row of all the titles. I'm going to go back to the home page, or the home tab, and I'm going to go here where it says alignment, and there's a little button called Wrap Text. So if I click on the Wrap Text button, it will do exactly what we described, where it'll come to an end of a line and then it'll continue. Well, now our cell isn't tall enough, so we've got to make it taller. A quick and easy way to do this is to actually come over here, and on the cell, right, you can do the same thing and make it wider. Or another way to just justify it so it's as big as it needs to is you just double click on that edge and then it'll automatically expand. So now this cell is nice and narrow, right? So we're going to adjust the rest of these, and since we wrap text on all of them, it should do the same for all of them. Actually, I'm going to leave those. I'll just change this one. All right, now this is looking pretty good. Look, I've even squeezed it on less than this amount, less than 1 page. This is great. Unfortunately, all my titles down here are now screwed up, so I better do wrap text for those as well. Hey, look, and it just auto-corrected that for me. I might just make it a little bit wider so it's only on 3, and that looks pretty good there. And I will shrink, whoops, too much. Shrink this so it fits. Now this is a nice table that fits on 1 page. In addition to getting it to fit on 1 page, there's another common problem that students never realize it when they print, and they just turn it in and they don't think about it. and that is that right now in Excel you see all these light gray boxes, all the grid lines to your data table, which makes it clear and easier to read. However, if you were to print this, you would have to imagine this with absolutely no grid lines. Let me see if I can make it look like there's no grid lines. If I just do, whoops. Format cell, and we're going to do fill white. Okay, so I've removed the grid lines now. Take a look. This is what I see when I print. And when I see this, I see some numbers here. I see some numbers here. I see some numbers here. Which one of these numbers, the ones or these numbers, correspond with trial 1? Which one of these numbers correspond with trial 3? It's not very clear, is it? The title trial 3 is right in between the two. Now watch what happens when I undo getting rid of the grid lines, and they're back. Now it's clear and easy to read. I know this box is over this box, so this title has to do with these numbers down here. So we need to make this clearer and easier to read, and students just print without realizing that it's not going to look good. So the very first thing I always do, or there's actually two ways to solve this problem. The first thing I always do is I always just highlight all my data and I just center it all. Now, without doing anything else, when you print this, it's going to have, let's do that one more time, format cells. You'll see I can still tell this title has to do with this data, right? Even without the lines. And that is very, very helpful. So I always center my data. You can center it, or you can put borders around it, so you can make it so when you print it actually shows those gray lines. And you do that under the Home tab, under Font, and right here, this button right here, if you hold onto it, it says Borders. Okay, and you click down the down arrow and then find all borders, and it'll just put all the boxes there. Now when you print, they'll actually appear. This is another way to make it clear. I personally do both. You can do one or the other, or both, however you want to do it. I'm also going to do the same for this data table down here. Center boxes around it, much clearer and easier to read. This table is almost perfectly clear and easy to read. There's only one more thing that we could do to make it slightly better. And that is these titles here, Trial 1, Trial 2, Trial 3, Trial 4, are very unclear. What is a Trial 4? What are you actually measuring? You need to be specific. So Trial 4, what does it measure? Well, we know it's supposed to measure acceleration. And this title right up here is supposed to tell you that it's measuring, Trial 4 is measuring acceleration. But you can notice the acceleration title is only really above these two trials and not above the other ones. And so I'm just not ever quite sure, does it really mean all the trials or just a couple of them? Or it's just not perfectly clear and easy to read. There's a clear and simple way to fix that. Highlight all the cells above the trials that you're talking about, and there's a button again under the Home tab, under Alignment, right underneath the rep text is a button called Merge and Center. And that takes all those cells and makes it one cell and then centers that object. So now it's over, well, 3 of them. It's still not over these 2. So there's one more thing we should do. Let's put a border around that. And let me actually just move this for a second so you can see that the edge of the thing's in the way. When you print this, this is what you'll see. A nice clear box over every single one of these boxes, right? So I know acceleration has to do with Trial 1, Trial 2, Trial 3, Trial 4, and Trial 5, which is nice, clear, and easy to read. With a nice clear table with correct sig figs and correcting all our mistakes, we're now ready to graph.